Okay, well, I am excited today to have a sweet mom of a young man that I worked with about a year ago. Is that right?
Mhm.
And she's going to tell us a little bit about her experience and what was going on with her son. So, welcome, Jennifer. Thanks for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
All right. So, can you just tell us a little bit about like what age you were finding that your child may need some help and just some of the specifics about what he was experiencing at that time.
Okay, so he's my third child, and so I just noticed he wasn't picking up on ABCs like my other two kids were. He wasn't recognizing letters and sounds like my other two were. He went to preschool and elementary school and just wasn't picking up on things like my other kids were. COVID happened and he came home and we were reading at home and doing Zoom classes with his teacher online. And I had concerns and I brought concerns to the teacher. At that time, he was kindergarten. And I said, he's not reading like my other kids were at this age. And she actually said, he's the best reader in the class. And I said, except for that he can't read. And she said, really? And I said, yeah, he can retell a story, but he's memorized the stories. But if I
Mhm.
stop him mid, sentence and say, can you tell me that word? He has no clue what the words actually are. And she said, oh, that is a telltale sign of dyslexia. So at that point, we kind of talked about it with my husband. I contacted Scottish Rite, and about a year later, because of COVID and everything, we had him tested. So he was first grade, and they said he has orthographic dyslexia, which at that point I didn't understand what that was. I did a ton of research, and we started kind of down this dyslexia pathway of, how are we going to figure this out? And I was homeschooling at this time, and we started with um, tutoring him. I had hired a dyslexia tutor. I had along the way of doing research, everybody said you have to do OG, which is Orton Gillingham based program, which for the most part, OG in everybody else's mind is you have to teach phonics and you have to do kind of tactile phonics based program. And I was doing that. We were doing a program called Barton, which is a fabulous program, but it is a phonics-based program. There's nothing
Right.
wrong with that, but my son scored very high with his phonetical awareness. And um, the orthographic dyslexia is a visual processing disorder, and phonics is not his problem. And so that type of program was not helping. I'd hired a dyslexia therapist that does a lot of different therapies. And again, she just kept saying, just keep on doing it. He'll eventually get it. The Barton tutor said, just keep on keeping on. He'll eventually get it. And so we kept paying hundreds of dollars to all these people that kept saying, just keep on doing everything that you're doing. He'll eventually get it. And after 2 years of tons of struggle and tears, he just was making zero progress. And that's when we met you and started doing your program and having tons of success with your program.
Well, I'm excited to know that you know that we were able to help, and I just enjoyed working with him so much. So when one of the things that you told me was that he was tested at a public school. Was this when he was in school or during that COVID?
So so later I had him, so we schooling, and after Scottish Rite, I took him back to the school because in our little town, you can get some services being a homeschooler in the public school. So I took him back and they tested him. And after I had done my own research and kind of knew the services that he needed, um, they gave me, hey, this is what we can provide for him. And it again was all phonics based. And I said, well, he has a visual processing disorder. So all of his needs are visual. And you're telling me you're going to provide phonics-based learning for him, and that's not really what he needs. And they said, "Well, what do you need? Do you mean he needs glasses?" And I said, "No, his brain is not interpreting what his eyes are telling the brain that he's seeing. So he's not seeing the words correctly. He's not tracking right to left. He actually, with the orthographic part of dyslexia, he sees like from the center of the word out. So he doesn't even necessarily track left to right or right to left. He kind of sees center out, and so the words kind of get jumbled in his brain. He needs some way to decode what he is seeing so he can see the words as a whole correctly. And I didn't understand that until I met you, and you were kind of explaining that a little bit better to us, that, the brain is just not interpreting what the eyes are seeing, and we need to just give the brain a new neural pathway so we can better have that brain interpret what they're seeing. But with everything that we were doing, nothing was correcting what he was interpreting in front of him. And no matter how much you tell the kid, hey, C says k, A says ah, T says t, you put that word cat in front of them, if it's jumbled in their brain, there's still no way they're going to be able to read it. So phonics-based learning, although it might work for some kids, it didn't work for us. And so that is why we were struggling so much for 2 years. We were frustrated with the school. We were frustrated with every other program out there that says, well, you just have to teach phonics. And that doesn't work. That doesn't work for us. Didn't work for us.
Yeah, it's interesting how that's kind of boiled down to just a one size fits all kind of thing, when
Right.
every child is unique in their abilities to interpret that visual information and get that right message to the brain. Even when they call it the Orton-Gillingham method, Samuel Orton said there's a bunch of different things that are going on with these people. They don't all have all of these, but they have balance issues, they have coordination issues, they have eye tracking issues, they have dominance issues. I don't know if this is one of Zachary's issues, using the wrong eye, but
He did have a little bit of that, and auditory processing a little bit as well.
mhm. So all of the things, that's what I really love about the neurodevelopmental approach, is it just looks at the whole child instead
Right.
of just a few symptoms that maybe lead a lot of professionals to a label. That's why we don't label
Right.
anyone with dyslexia. All that information is great for us to use going forward to help the child, but we look at them through a whole new lens of what's their tactile system doing? What are the feedbacks from the auditory and visual, and the handedness, the language, and the mobility. All of those things work together to help your brain work better. Tell us a little bit about, I know it was just about a year that you were working with Brain Sprints, I think, until lots of things were resolved, or is it a little bit longer?
We ended up, you graduated us at about 16 months.
Okay.
So we did it a little bit longer. He made great strides at 4 months. And we did the full year, but at 1 year, there were a few other things that we were still working on, so we went a little bit longer.
Okay. Yeah, it's just it's really great to be able to individualize the programs for the child. And tell me a little bit about your experience day to day. I know, it's an involved program, not simple. It's not always easy.
Right.
Would you say that?
Yes, yes. The activities they're engaging and they're kind of fun, from like, he had tracking issues, and even though I might not understand all of your exercises, I'm assuming like the log rolling and the go outside and get in a swing and spin in circles. I'm assuming that has to do with like the eyes tracking, one direction and that kind of thing. It was at least fun for him. And so he didn't dread doing the activities. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, read this over and over and over again and just dreading the program. The activities were fun and they were simple and they were short. And so they weren't where he was getting exhausted doing them, but they were tedious and they were a little bit draining, and they were okay, moving on to the next thing and moving on to the next thing and moving on to the next thing. And okay, now repeat, because I think most everything we had to do at least twice in a day. And sometimes our days would get away from us and we wouldn't always get to go back and repeat every activity two times. But we were pretty diligent about doing the activities. I had a pretty strict schedule with him because I thought if we're going to pay for this program and if it's going to work, we're going to put in the time to do it. So we worked on all those log rolls and army crawls and flashcards and reading and all the activities as much as we could to make sure that we were as thorough as possible to get the best results as possible.
One of the things that Jennifer's referring to in doing something more than one time a day is the philosophy that we have of frequency, intensity, and duration. So often, doing it often, sometimes once a day, sometimes twice a day. And the intensity, how strong the information is, and doing it a short period of time and then over time. What that does is build these new pathways that all of the abilities are based on. So once you get a mature pathway, there's progress that's made. So do you want to say a little bit about his reading and how he progressed in his reading?
Yes, so when we first started, it was the first 4 months, I would say, are kind of the hardest because you're learning all these new activities and they're intense and a little bit crazy, and you're not really understanding the purpose behind them. And I mean, it is overwhelming at the beginning. And you're going online, you're going, what was this activity and what was the purpose of it? And how are we doing these army crawls? And there were even some phone calls, am I doing this right? And can you explain this one to me again? And I love that you're available and we can either log into the Zoom and we can call and go, what was this again? I didn't really understand this. Or you have the activities, either I can print the exercises out or I can go on and watch the activities online. But it took a long time, I feel like, that first 4 months of integrating all of the activities. And
A
once we
little
got
bit of
all of the activities going, finally we kind of got a system going where we were doing the activities routinely, and we got a system in place where we felt comfortable with all of the activities, and we finally felt like we were in a good rhythm. I got an email from Brain Sprint saying, "Hey, it's been 4 months, time for reevaluation." And I thought, it's already been 4 months. We just got started. We just got going on this. One of our activities was echo reading. Where at the beginning, again, my son, when we first started, he could read nothing. So echo reading was just where I would read a few words of a story and he would basically just repeat the words. He's supposed to be following along with me, but at the beginning he couldn't read. And then he got to where he could recite a few more words and then a sentence and then a couple sentences and then a paragraph. And then he got to where he was reciting quite a bit. It was September and it was a pretty day and we were outside on the porch reading, and I would read a paragraph and he would read a paragraph, and then he lost track of where I had stopped and he finished the whole page. And he looked up at me with these big eyes and he goes, "Mom, is that what it's like to read?" He goes, "I heard myself saying the words and I realized that you hadn't said them first." He goes, I I read by myself." And he was so proud of himself. And that was the first time that he actually realized that he could read on his own. And that was September. So it was right as he was going into what would have been his third grade year. And I mean, I was in tears and he was just so proud of himself. And after that point, he just soared with his learning. We just kept going with the program, and that was only after 4 months. And at that point, he was excited to learn. And now he's fifth grade. He's on level with everything, math, reading. His comprehension is maybe just a little bit behind still, but we have to remember he didn't read until third grade. So giving him a little bit of grace there. His speed is a teeny tiny bit behind, but he's catching up with that as well and doing really, really good. And just continuing to do well. And he caught himself the other day wanting to sit down and read. And he goes, I actually said I wanted to read. He goes, I can't believe that those words just came out of my mouth because it's always been a drag for him. But the stories that you always recommend, they're these little Amish stories, and he loves the stories. He's gotten to where he knows the characters because we've read all of the stories now because we started from the early on, and now we're in the fifth grade books, and he's read all of the stories and he loves the stories, and he enjoys them. So it's not a drag anymore. He's reading the fifth grade level. He's doing the activities, and he can do it independently now. He's doing amazing.
That's terrific. That is so, just warms my heart for sure. So
Yes.
would you say that now that, because we worked on a lot of things that would help him use his phonics, do you think that he uses phonics sometimes for words that he doesn't know?
Absolutely. Yes. So his phonics, he can sound out big words. Now we have gone back to using that Barton program that didn't work at all at the beginning. We are using that Barton for some of those really big words, like those 3 and 4 syllable words, how to decode those and break those down. He is able to look at all of those. And then we are starting to add in like Latin and Greek root words but that has nothing to do with his dyslexia. That's just moving on up in his learning and just
Right.
growing
Right.
as a student.
So it's interesting because all of the dyslexia programs that I'm aware of right now are phonics based. They may have some tactile involved or, some little twists, but it's
Hmm.
basically just good phonics. The thing that the Brainsprints program does is work on the root cause of why phonics wasn't effective for him to begin with. Built those new pathways. We developed his auditory processing so that he could hold on to those pieces of the word to be able to get the word out after he hears each piece, then he can capture the whole word. So it's not that we don't like phonics. I love
Correct.
phonics. I just wanted to
Right.
clarify that because
Yes.
phonics is a great way to teach reading if all the other pieces are in place. If your
Right.
auditory processing is good, your brain is organized so that those pathways are bringing that information in and out. All of that is key to
Right.
being able to be successful in phonics. So one thing that's so great about this is we build their confidence. They can read, that
Right.
just sometimes they get to the point of, oh my, there must be something wrong with me. I can't read at all. And it sometimes gets to be a self-esteem issue. I don't know if that happened
Right.
with Zach.
It did. It wasn't as bad with him because we were at home, so he wasn't being compared to his peers.
Mm,
I think if he was
yeah,
at school, it would have been a lot worse. But he still knew that he couldn't read like his friends could. Even still, he sometimes will go to a restaurant and he'll say, read me the menu. And I'll go, no, you can read it yourself. And he sometimes forgets that he's now completely capable. I did go after you graduated us. I went back to the dyslexia therapist that we were using before because I felt like, oh no, Jan's graduated us and now I don't know what to do because you had given us like such great step-by-step stuff. And I was like, no, what do I do? And I thought, I still felt like, oh, there's holes in his education. Like, what do I do? And so I went back to the dyslexia therapist we were using before, and she tested him and she goes, there are no holes in his dyslexia education. She goes, he needs zero dyslexia intervention. She goes, he just needs to build his confidence. And she said, I would not change anything that you are doing. She said, whatever you did to fix what he was doing, worked. She said from when she had seen him 2 years prior, she goes, I'm floored. You need to be a dyslexia therapist. Like what you did was amazing. He went from not reading to like he could go back in school and be completely on level. He needs to work on his speed. And that's when she recommended just going back to doing the basic reading. He just needs to build on his newly found learning skills and just keep on with building that skill set that now he can learn correctly.
So that's interesting. I didn't know you went back to your dyslexia person. It's very interesting to hear her reaction. That's
Yeah.
because she had worked with him for what, 2 years?
She worked with him, yeah, about a year and a half before I had met you. And she's a sweet person. She was basically doing the same thing. I mean, I just felt like I was banging my head against the wall. There just was no substance. I mean, she just kept telling us the same thing. Just keep working with him. He'll eventually get it. And I just kept feeling like I'm missing something. There's nothing. I'm just not seeing results. She was very happy with his results.
Well, that's really good. Well, and I think part of it is that's the way they're trained. They're trained, this
Mhm.
is what works for dyslexia. And
Right.
again, if you go back to what Orton found, um, and all the different things, we can't just say phonetic awareness is the thing when
Right.
there could be these other things that are inhibiting it. So hopefully we're gonna get the word out more to people because the people were trained that's what they tell people, and just like you keep doing the same thing, but that's the definition of insanity,
Right.
doing the same thing and expecting different results. Sometimes I guess it works in with dyslexia because their processing maybe comes up to where it should, and then they're able to handle the phonics, but to me, it's better to work on the root, get the
Mhm.
foundation built, and then they just soar. So it's so exciting to hear
Right.
that even with the way we started him, learning to read, that now he can do the more sophisticated words with phonics, because that's what all this does is it builds the foundation for taking the next step. And
Right.
that is um, one thing we do have to acknowledge is when we're reading, we do not sound out all those words. We don't read with phonics. Once we know a word, we know it. And
Right.
so we don't have to sound it out, but it's important to be able to decode those more complex words. So um, anything in your family dynamics that changed that was notable before and after doing the program?
Zachary definitely had some anxiety, impulse control. We definitely struggled. I think we were, all in tears at the end of the day when we were trying to do school. Those neural pathways kind of got straightened out. He could start remembering things. Then he was less frustrated. His impulse control was better. His anxiety went down. And so he went from this kind of not out of control kid. I mean, he was a little out of control, and now he's just this polite, respectful, yes, ma'am, I can do this. He's a little bit more confident, and he is just more delightful to be around. Even his friends have noticed, even before his friends would say, "Ooh, don't make Zachary mad because like or don't disagree with him," because he would just get so upset. Now he has so many friends. Everybody wants to be his friend. He's just so likable, and so not just our family, but I mean his friends can tell the difference in him. Discipline wise, we don't really have I mean, I correct him once and yes, ma'am, mom, he'll go do his chores and it's just a better all around.
Oh,
So
that's
that
great.
it's made a huge difference.
Yeah, that it just seems like it raises everything. Once you get the
Mhm.
foundation built and you get those skills and those pathways working, then everything just rises. So
It's made a
that's
huge
exciting to
difference.
Exciting to hear. So if you had somebody that you knew that had a child with a label of dyslexia, what would you recommend to them?
Don't hesitate to put your time and money into this program. Don't hesitate in starting. I felt like I started later than what I wanted to. I wish I had found this program sooner. Would say other programs try to just teach the kid to compensate for a lifelong um, problem, whereas this program teaches you to correct the problem so you don't have a lifelong issue. And then you can just have a lifelong enjoyment of learning.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I like that. So sometimes children come to me with multiple labels and they have issues in several different areas and get quite a few labels, sometimes three or four. Was there anything besides dyslexia that Zachary was dealing with?
Zachary also had severe dysgraphia. So his brain was not telling his hands to write the words correctly either. So that was also very frustrating. And so part of our exercises with you were strengthening his muscles in his hands to help him be able to write better. And then, you know, writing, we didn't do a lot of writing with you as ready. So we did a lot of just hand exercises before we even started putting a pencil in his hand to do the actual writing. And then we even drew in sand or in rice first, just a lot of just basic skills first before we started with the writing. He has gone from not reading and writing at all to, like I said, this year he's completely on level with reading, writing, math, everything just by getting the foundations that you have put in place for him to be able to be successful with every aspect of his education.
No, that's terrific. So, to do creative writing like IEW, you have to be able to get the pencil to correctly put what's in your brain
Mm-hmm.
down. And so I think that what you're highlighting is not only were the pathways built for him to be able to move his pencil correctly and make that letter formation that's typical of children with dysgraphia, that's such a challenge for them, but also think through to make the sentence, to make the paragraph,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing, which comes from some of the other activities we were working on for his short-term memory and that
Right.
kind of thing. So building, again, we're just building that foundation so that everything works together. So
Yes.
that's what I love about neurodevelopment. It's not just a narrow little focus of one little thing of going to a therapist for handwriting, but what's causing that little brain not to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I just appreciate so much hearing your success and thank you so much for being here and doing all the hard work that it took to get your son where he is. So a lot of the credit goes to you. Way
Well,
to go,
thank you.
Mom.
Thank you. Thank you very much.